Hello to everyone and the internet. Feeling far less exhausted today. Thank goodness. What a good night's sleep will do for you, huh? Anyway, it is currently Wednesday, January 9th, and you are watching The Young Globalist, and this is the news. Alright, so 14 million poor in England. Government doesn't seem to care. I'm not surprised. The UN found similar poverty findings in the United States. Yeah, for some reason it just seems like there's a lot of poor folk. More so than what you would typically see. I mean, that's 14 million in the UK alone. It's a pretty big portion of their population. But the conservative British government pretty much doesn't seem to care and might even be compounding the poverty situation. Might be making it worse, in other words. But why? Why exactly would they be doing that? Well, I think it's pretty obvious why. I think they just don't give a shit. Many a year, it seems like in European culture, if you look at the history, it seems like European culture in general has always had it out for the poor folk, for one reason or another. Almost like it's got something against them. And even here in America, that's also kind of true. People are building tiny houses for the poor people in Los Angeles, and they had to take them all away and shut them down, whatnot, and just let them live out in the street instead of actually giving them a place to be, just because people thought they were unsightly in the middle of nowhere. Blah blah blah. So what? How selfish can you be? It just seems like, admittedly, no, I don't believe that as a white person I should feel white guilt, nor should anyone. But it just seems like wherever we white folk happen to be, we take our culture with us, and there's just something in our culture that seems to have something against poor people, for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. And the British are white, for now. Possibly not for much longer. But them essentially compounding the poverty situation is nothing new. Many a European and/or white government in general have done similar. Like I said, it just kind of seems to be a thing for whatever reason. I can't think of anything else that could explain what they're up to, other than maybe they just don't care. And they also don't care about Brexit. The despotic British government, drunk on power, just doesn't seem to care about anything except what makes them more powerful. They're possibly a preview to what the United States government could become, since our establishment is also hella corrupt, although not quite as openly corrupt as the British government. We're not there just yet, but maybe just consider the possibility that this is a foreshadowing. And the way they behave as a foreshadowing. Directly controlling their media while censoring alternative media, so no opposing voices are ever heard. That's just one example, among others. Also maneuvering troops and soldiers to maintain how things are over there. That happens. Well, maybe they didn't outright maneuver them, but I mean what they did was that they put them at the ready. In the event of a yellow vest movement of their own. It's obvious that the British government is making moves to keep themselves in power. They're hella unreasonable. And they're hurting poor people. It's like, when are you guys going to learn? Trump is considering a state of national emergency over the wall funding. Trump basically said that it's just on the table. Something that he says frequently, that's a common phrase of his. Oh, it's on the table. It's on the table. It's on the table. It's on the table. That's a table back there. My TV's on the table. Yeah, Trump frequently says if he's just considering it but not really doing it, it's on the table. And when it comes to Trump, you know what that means. That means that he might do it, he might not do it. There's just as much a chance of him not doing it as doing it. I mean, sometimes I like Trump. I like Trump. He's a good president. He's a great anti-establishment president, because our establishment is corrupt. But sometimes I think he's a legendary procrastinator. He takes a lot longer to make up his mind on whether or not he's going to do something. A lot longer than he should or needs to. In a way, I almost feel like Trump secretly enjoys procrastination. Like he likes waiting to the very last minute and make you sort of bite your nails. I think that's how it like. I mean, he was a reality TV star, for crying out loud. That's kind of what reality TV is all about. Maybe you can take the man out of the reality TV, but you can't take the reality TV out of the man. Who knows? The unreality TV is how I feel about it, anyway. But the Democrats are the ones who pushed him to this point. I mean, we need that wall. I already talked to you and read you articles on how Obama's border policies in his era literally made the United States a sex trafficker's paradise. All right, and even the Child Protective Service and the foster care system made it that much easier because of certain flaws in how they function. And I mean, I told you about how I went through the foster care briefly as a kid because I was starved for attention and kept running away. But when I went through the system, I didn't think that, I didn't see or hear anything like that was going on. Which is why I think it was something that was probably going on underneath, sort of, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. That only certain families were actually responsible. Right? So like it's maybe 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of 5, which is still way too high a statistic. Bottom line is, whatever you think, the data doesn't lie. Our border situation is profoundly messed up. Even the Democrats can't deny it. When faced with statistics, instead of lying, they just say nothing because they know they can't get away with it. Bottom line is, we need that wall. We need it. But the establishment Dems are never going to give up. All right, the pro-establishment Democrats are never going to give up, because illegal immigrants with the ability to vote will always vote for them, and that makes them very powerful. Which is why they would fight the establishment of the building of the wall, because it would literally interfere with their power base, with a big part of it. And yes, illegal immigrants can get a vote, because they don't have to prove citizenship when you go vote. You just have to register your name and age. It's literally that easy. Right? I think we should take a cue from Denmark here and make our national security even more tight. Enough with the security theater. The TSA does absolutely nothing to make us safe. Alright? Most of our so-called security measures in the United States make us feel safe, but they don't actually make us safe. Not even remotely. The TSA is a waste of time, as just for one example. The best security agency we honestly have is ICE. Alright? They're the best we got, so keep ICE. Those guys are awesome. I would say disband a bunch of the stupid alphabet soup organizations as well, and take all the extra funding and just give it to ICE. And, I really wanted Trump's ID register idea, that you had to present an ID in order to vote. I was all for that, but of course they had to shut it down. Because that was a great idea. We need more security to prevent illegal aliens and other things from, voting left. That's what makes them so much more powerful. And the neocons and Republicans that are also pro-establishment Republicans are just controlled opposition. They're all part of the same establishment. The pro-war, pro-abortion establishment that is corrupt as all hell and drunk on power. And like I said earlier, British government that's trying to exercise Not overtly, but exercising that much power, like getting troops at the ready and censoring mainstream, directly controlling mainstream media, censoring alternative media, right? Straight up 1984 despotism. That's a preview of what the United States is going to turn into if we don't try and hold our establishment accountable. Oh, I'm provocative. Say I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe in the Illuminati. That's a conspiracy theory. I don't believe in the deep state either. I just believe that our governments, that our the establishment functions like a mafia. Some things they do in the light of day, some things they don't. And even sometimes some of the things they do in the light of day can be shady as hell, shady AF. Bottom line is, it's because they're all career politicians. They've been in the game for most of their lives. They made it their job to be politicians. And that's why they're so corrupt, because they've been in that quest for political power. Whereas Trump, independently wealthy. Completely different situation, completely different type of politician. And it's a type of politician we need more of. Whatever else you think of Trump. Bernie Sanders has responded to a Trump speech declaring climate change the greatest crisis of all. Settle down there, Bernie Sanders. Let me tell you a little story. A little story about how there is a little, there's this little petition signed by almost hundreds of thousands of scientists since the 90s. This petition states that there's no good reason to believe that human-caused climate change, that is anthropogenic climate change, is real. And that if it is happening, it is a natural process, and one that has happened before. Take a look at texts like the Bible and other religious texts from a similar period, and hear descriptions of Egypt. And I think you'll notice something is that the description of Egypt could not, as far as climate, be considered an accurate description of Egypt as it exists today. Right? It's just one great big desert now, for the most part. But many of these older texts describe an Egypt that sounds more like Southern California, which is not so much a desert as it is just what we call Badlands terrain, where the soil is very dry, but it is not so dry that water is completely absent. It's just that the soil has a really hard time retaining moisture. It's more, it's just very dry, but not the straight-up desert. There's even talk of the possibility of palm trees having been there. And there's still palm trees there in certain areas. There's all kinds of historical texts indicating that climate change has happened before. And there's even some suggestion that climate change is something that just naturally occurs prior to an ice age. The ice shelf melts, the water level rises, and then everything freezes. My position is still what it was before. That there's going to be yet another ice age, and there's nothing we can do about it except just survive. So like I said, calm down, Bernie. Calm down. Humans can't actually cause climate change. Although we can pollute the air and make it really hard to breathe. I mean, do I really need to bring up Hong Kong right now? In China, or Bali in India, where literally the air is just so full of particulates and harmful gases because people are stupid. Anyway, bottom line is, try not to worry so much and just live and survive the best you can. Worrying too much will be the death of us all, really. Just be ready for the inevitable of yet another ice age. And maybe try and clean up the air pollution a little bit. Maybe try and, create a device that can clean the air. Like a mechanical tree or something. Not like a literal tree, but you know what I mean. Trump stops FEMA funding to California, citing improper forest management. You know, the funny thing about that is, how is that really going to help? Like I said, I am a Trump supporter. Not a hardcore Trump supporter, but a Trump supporter. But sometimes he does certain things that I'm just like, what in the actual fuck are you doing right now, Donald Trump? Like, how is that going to solve the issue of improper forest management? And you do realize the reason why they didn't have proper forest management is because the fucking environmentalists wouldn't let them do it. Because they're so opposed to slash and burn operations. Even though they never considered the fact that sometimes slash and burn operations are for part and parcel of forest management. Nature has a system of observable checks and balances. The butterfly effect, all that wonderful shit. And honestly, environmentalists, they have their heart in the right place, but their brain isn't right there along with it, alright? They don't understand the natural system of checks and balances because they're not scientists. That's the kind of shit for scientists and philosophers to examine. And most environmentalists are usually neither. But at the same time, Trump stopping FEMA funding, that's not going to do anything. That's just, if anything, that's going to make the shit worse. How are they going to afford proper management if they've just got their funding cut? I mean, am I wrong? Can they get the funding elsewhere? Does it even matter? I think it does. I think they should need that money. I mean, to do it properly. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I live in a state that has a shit ton of trees. Right? And we could do the occasional slash and burn. We got our shit covered. Of course, we're always sandwiched in between California and fucking Canada. We got smoke from fires coming up south and from coming down north. We get right in between. God forbid you have asthma. I'm going to start ranting before too long. So I better move on. Senator James Lankford says no border deal without wall amid all 9 members of Congress from the southern border to reject the wall. So in other words, all of the senators from southern states, including Texas, reject the idea of the border wall, even though Texas okayed the funding because the governor of Texas knows what they're doing. I can't remember if it was a man or a woman. I can't remember the name. I usually don't remember most people's names very well. That's why I usually have them in my bullet points. But James Lankford, as a senator, pretty much just says he's not going to okay a border deal without the wall. So I guess Trump has a few more supporters than just Rand Paul. But the number of allies he has within our own political system is pretty small. Just goes to show you how corrupt the establishment is. I mean, fuck them. I'm with James Lankford here. As screwy as some of Trump's ideas can honestly be, the wall is not quite so insane. We're not talking about like a big medieval castle or a concrete barrier. We're just talking about a nice, functional, tall, slat wall made of prefabricated material. I mean, Trump's not the lunatic the mainstream media is going to point him out to be. He's not like that. And then finally, Trump made a speech that pretty much just rehashed all of his arguments so far. No sign of that he'll ever do the national emergency declaration thing. I mean, that would look a little weird if he did, just because over the border wall. That would make him look a little desperate, almost as desperate as the Dems to stop him from doing it. As far as I'm concerned, oh, by the way, for those of you who are food stampers, don't worry about the partial government shutdown. You guys are safe. But, because Trump's seen to it that it is going to keep going. But Trump made this speech, this very impassioned speech, as most of his are, because he's a charismatic. But bottom line is, he's not the crazy person they make him out to be, because that's what they expect. Or at the very least, that's what they want you to think. They're the crazy ones, let me tell you. Bottom line is, we need that wall. And whether or not he should declare a national emergency, that would make him seem a little nuts. Because not having the wall doesn't really hurt us as far as our ability to operate as a nation, but it does create what is essentially a humanitarian crisis. So from an administrative standpoint, it would seem a little extreme. But if you think about it from an ideological and criminal standpoint, it makes perfect sense. And the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans, they literally are criminals. They're always starting wars and using illegal aliens to get more votes and more power. I mean, it's got to stop somewhere. We need that wall, folks. We need it. Anyway, that's it for the Young Globalist today, folks. I'm out.